Join your host, Maddie Roche, as she brings you into a community of fee-only financial advisors who are successfully building profitable businesses that serve the next generation of clients. Learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your best life and help your clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello, and welcome to episode 322 of XYPN Radio. I'm Maddie Roche, your host. I'm excited to interview a woman I really admire in this industry, and one I get to call a teammate now, Kathleen Boyd, a CFP, a former financial planner, and now XYPN's very own financial planning and process coach. Some of you may remember Kathleen when she was on episode 131 with Alan about 4 years ago, talking about diversity and inclusion. Today, she's on the show to talk about her work as our financial planning and process coach here at XYPN. Kathleen discusses the challenges advisors face when building their processes, how they can get taken over with analysis paralysis as they try to systematize. And she offers some sage advice on how to avoid these pitfalls. She gives a lot of credit and love to the advisors who choose to start their own businesses and encourages them to think outside the box on who and how they want to serve their clients. Kathleen is a Black queer woman and has had a diverse and broad career and impactful career in this industry. She's been on Investment News's 40 Under 40 list, and she shares today what it's been like to find her place in this industry with the help of mentors and what it's been like to work at XY, a place that she says embraces progressive thinking in a real way. If you're interested in how to leverage your financial planning experience in a number of different career paths, then this episode is for you. Tax planning and preparation is an enormous value add for your clients, but taxes can very quickly become overwhelming as an advisor. XY Tax Solutions is the tax team in your corner that works with advisors to offer expert tax services to their clients with 3 different client engagement options to choose from to meet your unique needs. Partner with XY Tax Solutions to integrate tax preparation and planning into your firm, and don't sweat tax time this year. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/XY Tax Solutions to learn more. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for. That's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Good morning, Kathleen. Welcome to XYPN Radio. Welcome back to XYPN Radio. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good morning to you, Maddie, and thank you so much for having me on. I'm very honored.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to this conversation. You are officially an XYPN teammate, one that I have absolutely adored working alongside. And let's go ahead and introduce you and your new role to our wonderful listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I am relatively new to the XYPN team. I'm the new financial planning and process coach as part of advisor education. And so the work that I do here is I help firms set up foundational financial planning processes, help provide templates, best practices for each phase of their planning processes, including their service models, their pricing structures, and the delivery of their services. I'm on a team of other coaches, including the fabulous Arlene Moss, who's an executive business coach, BB Webb, our brilliant sales coach, and Carolyn Dalle-Mollet. Love saying that name. And she's our marketing coach. A little bit about me. I am a high school dropout turned CFP professional. I've worked in financial services for about 10 years now. Started my career in commercial banking as an analyst, made the switch to private banking where I managed portfolios, then transitioned over to the broker-dealer side where I didn't last very long, and then spent a few years on the independent RIA space, which I really enjoyed, until Alan poached me on over to the XYPN team earlier this year.
Wow. Wonderful overview, Kathleen. And you'd been on our radar for a long time. You actually were on XYPN radio about 2-3 years ago. I believe it was episode 131, talking about a different topic, but you've had a really impressive career. And I'm interested to start in the banking channel and then move to the independent RIA space. Can you talk through some of those transitions of what that was like to kind of find your way in this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of landed into this industry by accident. So it all started in grad school. I had scored an internship with a major commercial bank, JP Morgan Chase, and they loved me so much, they offered me a full-time role. So before I even completed my master's program, I already had a job in hand, and I was just cruising along and just really excited. And it was my last semester of grad school, and I was trying to figure out how to keep myself busy until the new job began. So I decided to take a financial planning course for fun. And in that course, that course ended up changing the trajectory of my career. In that course, I met a professor who was a working CFP. He worked for Wells Fargo. And at the time, I didn't take him seriously because I thought, oh, this guy, Wells Fargo, he's just a sales guy. What does he know about real financial planning? But he ended up blowing my mind just how brilliant he was. And I guess he liked my contributions in class and the way that I challenged him and questioned him. And I was always the one who sat in front of the class. I was the only one. And I guess that made a huge impression on him. So he got me a job at Wells Fargo as part of a 2-year post-MBA investment management program, very elite. I was in a cohort of, people that had graduated with their MBA from Yale, from Cornell, like top elite program. And here I am, just this young girl from the University of Utah among all these Ivy Leaguers in this program. So that's how it started. And I enjoyed my couple of years at Wells Fargo, but ultimately it wasn't really for me. If you know anything about Wells Fargo, they are very sales oriented. In fact, when I first started that role and we met the chief investment officer, one of the first things he told us was, if you were a janitor working at Wells Fargo, you better be selling. And I was like, wow, really? And then ultimately, they didn't even want us doing portfolio management, even though the program was centered around portfolio management. They actually wanted us to outsource it to a back office in like some low cost of living city like Vegas or Charlotte. And they wanted you focused on asset gathering and bringing in new high net worth clients. And that just wasn't me. I'm not good at sales. That's not really what I signed up for. And I don't know a lot of wealthy people that I could bring to the private bank. So I knew ultimately this wasn't going to be a good fit long term. And not only that, I started to get a real interest in financial planning. I noticed that, in client meetings, I could only really speak for 5 minutes about the investment part and the performance of the portfolio. But when the other advisors on the team would talk about, things like revocable trust, I had to ask my boss, what's a revocable trust? Do
I have a revocable trust?
Or what's a GRUT? What's a GRAT? And all these estate planning terms. And I had no clue what was going on. So that sort of incentivized me to start, pursuing a CFP and getting out of sales and finding, jobs within, the independent RIA space, because I just was not impressed with the banking world anymore and what it was about. So I ended up moving. So at the time I was living in Utah, and I ended up moving to Southern California, where I'm originally from, and basically starting over. I credit a lot of my career success to the Financial Planning Association. And one of the first things I did when I moved was I joined my local FPA chapter. And one of the best decisions I ever made, I got connected to a couple of mentors, one who specifically helped me pass the CFP exam on the first try, another who helped me score some internships and get some real working experience. And so that gave me the taste of that independent RA space. So first I started off in the broker dealer world. I should start with that first. I started off in the working for a broker dealer. I lasted 6 months because that was still kind of sales as well. I call it, advisors that do AUM. The majority of their work is AUM based, and then they sprinkle a little bit of financial planning on top. But then, they're still selling life insurance on the side. That's kind of what was happening, and I wasn't really interested in that as well. So ended up transitioning out, and then figuring out that the independent fee only true fiduciary side was my cup of tea. And so that's where I had been the last 4 or 5 years. Wow. Make a long story short.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I so appreciate your career experience, because I think you're a really good example of how you can continue to pivot until you find something that you really feel in alignment with. And what I've heard kind of as a theme through your story is that you've had some really incredible mentors, and folks in the industry that have looked out for you, given you recommendations, given you opportunities. And I hear that as really a main part of the reason people are welcomed into this industry and stay in this industry, and joining something like the FPA in your area is such a testament to your ability to lean in and network. And that's really how you can find additional support that can get you in the door to different places. Have you felt that mentorship and kind of leadership has helped you navigate all this?
Absolutely. I think the mentorship that I found through the FPA was very instrumental in my career development. In fact, I don't think I would be here where I am today, sitting here talking to you at XY Planning Network without the Financial Planning Association. And so that's what I recommend for folks trying to get their foot into the door is join your local FPA chapter, get involved, find a couple of mentors, and that'll get you on your way. It did for me.
And yeah. And to our listeners who have the power and privilege of networking with folks who haven't yet achieved the status or the position or the experience that they have, extend a hand and offer opportunity to be someone that a young student can call. That's how I got into the industry. It sounds like that's how you've been able to navigate this industry. I think it's a fabulous reminder to give back. And I sense members actually, as they get to kind of year 2 or 3, they're like, okay, I'm ready to give back and start mentoring. So I love this industry so much because it is like that. Yeah. Kathleen, it's been 4 years. Thanks for that reminder from that last podcast. I feel like it was more recent than that, but a lot's changed in the industry for you, in this world. What has changed for you?
So since I was last on the podcast, I earned my CFP designation, passed the exam on the first try, which I was really grateful for. I was able to do a lot of writing for the industry, specifically for the Journal of Financial Planning, and I got to write around topics specific to race and racism in our industry. I was the first and only advisor to write about critical race theory in the Journal of Financial Planning before critical race theory became the whole political rage that it is right now. I was able to write about topics like white fragility and white supremacy, again, in the Journal of Financial Planning of all places, the first and only advisor to do so. So I was really grateful for those opportunities to write and express myself. And I was also able to organize my city's first pro bono financial planning program. And I received recognition by my mayor for that. He gave me a city proclamation for organizing that event. I've been recognized by a variety of industry publications, including Investment News, where I got, 40 under 40, FA Magazine, who listed me as one of the young and bold as part of their 10 young advisors to watch list. I did some work with the CFP board. They invited me to their headquarters in DC as part of a study group to help with their new client psychology curriculum as part of the CFP board curriculum now. I played an instrumental part in that. I've been doing some writing for Michael Kitz's blog, including a piece on financial planning for assisted reproductive technology,
Wow.
which I was really proud of. I am a part-time professor now. So outside of the work I do at XYPN, I teach CFP coursework at Oklahoma State University through the Great Plains IDEA program. I worked for a few RAAs over the years, and now I'm here at XY.
Kathleen, you should be very, very, very proud of yourself. That those accolades and experiences. I meeting you in person. It's like you're a lightning bolt of energy and authenticity, and I think that's so why and part of the reason you've been able to experience such a beautiful career. So congrats on those changes and evolution.
Thank you.
I want to pivot just a little bit and kind of focus on this last portion of your professional career where you went from planner to coach. And I'm interested in what that transition was like and your experience as a planner and what it's like now to be someone that coaches planners on execution.
Yeah, it's been a really positive shift overall, Maddie. It's kind of different now in that, when I was a planner, I was more meeting with clients on a one-on-one basis. I had about 50 to 70 clients that I helped service. And now the way that I think about it in my current role, my clients are the 1,500 plus members we have in the network. And my job is to serve them and support them in their success. And so I've really seen this as an opportunity to really make a much more significant impact than I could as a planner. Not that the planner role wasn't a great job or an impactful role, but when you think about it as an advisor, I'm only impacting maybe 50 to 70 clients. But here at XY, I'm impacting over 1,500 members plus their 50 to 70 clients. So it's a much bigger impact that I can make than I had before. But in terms of, the skill sets between an advisor and a coach, I don't think it's much different. The skill sets that you need in this role are pretty much similar. It involves, understanding the member's needs. It involves actively listening, great communication skills, the ability to educate and motivate, just like if you're an advisor working with clients. So still a lot of similarities as being an advisor.
I love that. I find that those of us who have the coaching skill set, you don't have to be an expert in what you're coaching on, despite you are an expert in what you're coaching on, to be able to be a fabulous coach. And I'm wondering, what are the qualities around kind of what you've experienced so far? Is you mentioned a few, listening and being present and things like that. What do you find most helpful? And maybe you're pulling in from your experience as a planner, but what helps motivate people? What have you found is works when coaching someone, whether it be a client or an advisor?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, they're looking for somebody who genuinely cares about them and their success. They're looking for somebody that's going to give them honest feedback in a way that's tactful, and somebody just overall that's just going to be invested in their success.
Wonderful. What have you noticed about the XYPN members and community?
Yeah, I've been learning a lot about our members and their journeys. And what starting and running a financial planning business truly entails. The way that I grew up, in society, oftentimes entrepreneurship is romanticized and glorified. But ultimately, what I'm seeing is it is a hell of a lot of work.
Yes.
And it's just like, what Michael Kitces frequently talks about, the iceberg effect is we see success, we see the top part of the iceberg that shows above the water, the success stories, the revenue stories. But we don't know what's going on behind the scenes or below the water, the hard work, the determination that's needed, the disappointments, just all the shit that is happening to get to that success. And so for me, it's been just really insightful to learn more about the member journeys, like the 4 different business phases that members are going through as they're starting and growing their firms, from the preparing phase, the implementing phase, the building and scaling phases, and just the different levels of support that members need at each level, the various resources we help provide them, and just, what they do on a day-to-day, starting a firm, it is not for the weak. It is for those who are committed to the day-to-day work and grind. And really my hat it goes off to every single one of our members in the network.
Yeah, me too. Well said, Kathleen. Being mission driven, which is one of XYPN's core values, is so easy to do when you really understand who we work with and what they do. It isn't for the weak. I'm interested in your perspective around why is their work so important to our world?
A couple of things. I think the work members do is incredibly important. One, because you're disrupting our industry. You are doing what for the longest time the industry said couldn't be done, which is that any clients under that $1 million threshold are not profitable. And XYPN and our members have proven that to be a big fat lie. And they are successfully running businesses and serving clients who don't have $1 million. So you're disrupting the industry, one. And secondly, I think your work is important because there continues to be a great need to do financial planning differently, in a way that serves younger generations, in a way that serves communities of different races, of different ethnicities, of different cultures, and ultimately to serve the underserved.
Can you expand a bit on doing it differently outside of who advisors are working with? I sense that you understand that there is something between wealth management and financial planning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I started my career in the wealth management industry that was primarily focused on asset gathering, and only working with those with, $3 million in assets or more, excluding their home value, and thumbing your nose at everybody else. And so it was very portfolio management centric and less financial planning centric. And so when you're working with younger clients, for example, who don't have the assets, they have different needs. They need help with cash flow and budgeting. They need help with looking at their employee benefits and understanding what is available to them and what they should opt into. They need help with student loan planning. There's just the whole gamut of financial planning topics other than just investment management they need help with. And I feel like our members are well positioned to help those types of clients more so than the traditional wealth management industry that's just been focused on assets for so long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm so intrigued by this line of conversation. And Kathleen, a number of years ago, when you were on the podcast with Bill Simonet and Alan, you were talking about diversity and inclusion. And you mentioned your thoughts around the AUM model. And I'm interested, have those changed? Have you felt a shift in that? Or how do you feel about the AUM model?
Yeah, so that was an interesting conversation. So that was back in 2017,
wow.
Almost 4 years ago. And when I said that, and we ended the podcast, and it ended up being published, and a member shared it on the XYPN Facebook group. And I didn't realize how provocative that statement was going to be because the post just blew up. Tons of comments. It was probably at the time one of the most commented on Facebook posts in the history of XYPN. I don't know if it still is, but at the time it was. And again, I just didn't realize how provocative that statement would be, that, AUM is racist. And, 4 years later, I still stand behind that statement. I believe, but I want to make some clarifications. I think it's AUM in tandem with asset minimums that makes it racist. And unfortunately, when people tend to hear the word racist, or especially white people, they tend to take that personally. And I think there were folks who thought that I was calling specific people out as racist. I was not doing that. Although I do believe all white people to be racist at the end of the day, because you have investments in a racist system, you benefit from racism, and most are not doing anything substantial to stop benefiting from it. But what I was referring to back in the conversation 4 years ago was that, the AUM was structurally racist.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, I think it's very similar to the concept of redlining. So for example, when you think about the concept of redlining, which started back in the 1930s, it intentionally excluded certain racial groups from having access to certain financial products because the institutions that were offering those products deemed these groups to be a financial risk, right? I don't see AUM. How is AUM any different than that? And in a very similar way, when you say, well, we're not going to work with anyone with less than $1 million, you are inherently excluding certain groups, and particularly Black and Brown communities, because that's what that disproportionately impacts. Because we have not had the same opportunities as other racial groups to participate in wealth building activities due to racist policies like redlining, due to the generations of discrimination and racism that we have faced. And so whoever invented the AUM model, I don't think they had that in mind at the time. They were just trying to build a profitable business, but they didn't have, the history of racism, the history of racial wealth gaps in mind when they put that in place. And so I still stand by that. I think it's racist. And instead of getting defensive about that, I hope the advisors that are listening to this, they take some time to pause, sit with your discomfort. If what I'm saying is making you feel uncomfortable, sit with that. Ask yourself, why are you getting defensive? And then ask yourself, is your firm doing things to perpetuate racial injustices? Are your fee models racist? When people go on your website, is it nothing but white people? Can a person of color see themselves, when they visit your website? Look at your clientele. Are all your clients white? Look at your staff, your employees. Are they all white? You cannot say that you are not racist, but continue to serve all white people or only hire white people or only have white people on your website. So I stand by that.
Yeah. And I so appreciate this line of conversation. And I really encourage all of our listeners to go back and listen to it. And as Kathleen encourages, just spend a few moments considering this. I do remember when your original podcast came out, and I do agree with you that structurally the AUM model is entirely racist. So to be able to, for 4 years ago, have someone like you open that door to even thinking about it. That's all this podcast does, is invite you to consider different things. We're not asking you to change anything immediately, but sit with some of these ideas on how can you, and I think it's maybe, well received, framed in this opportunity that like everyone who's running their own businesses has a huge opportunity to effectuate change in their own way and to embrace that right now through how you serve, who you employ, how you show up. I think the more and more we can do that as an industry, the more we're going to shake it up. So thank you for that, Kathleen. I'm interested in your experience as a Black woman in this industry, having worked at these different banks and broker dealers and now at XYPN. What has your evolution been in terms of finding a place that you feel is forward thinking and isn't just paying lip service to it?
Yeah, great question, Maddie. It's been incredibly hard. When I first, got my foot into this industry, looking back, I was incredibly naive. I was going into it thinking, here's a career I could enjoy where I could make good money and become successful. I never thought that, my race would have an impact around, how I would be treated, what type of jobs I could get. And it's just been incredibly difficult to navigate, especially when you finally land that job. And then not only are you the only woman on the advisory team, you're also the only Black person on the team, and then queer on top of that. So it's like a triple whammy. And, I've really struggled over the years fitting into the culture. And, I feel like we've got to move beyond these conversations of diversity and inclusion, because it's not enough. And this has been said over and over again, it's not enough to just hire.
Right.
And it's really not enough to include people, because I have felt included in firms that I've worked for, but I was included in their culture. I was expected to assimilate in their culture. I didn't feel like I could be myself or bring parts of me to the culture and be that culture add, because at the end of the day, it is the power majorities in these firms that are running the culture. Okay. And so, it's just been really hard for me. And that's why I really appreciate Alan and his intentionality and his, being very persistent in bringing me on board to XYPN, because, he understood some of the things that I've been going through and some of my struggles with fitting in and just the wealth management culture in general for a Black woman. And so I'm so glad that he hired me and brought me onto the XYPN team. I feel like XYPN has offered what I have been starving for a really long time. I finally work inside of a company with a culture where I can be myself, where I don't feel like I have to code switch or adhere to some level of whiteness that is often pervasive in these advisory firms. I work for a company that truly talks the talk and walks the walk when it comes to diversity and inclusion through initiatives, through commitments, through goals, through the data they track. I love how leadership is accessible. I can get a meeting on Alan's calendar at any time if I wanted to, as the CEO of the company, and not everybody can say that about their CEOs. And he actually listens when you talk to him. And I just feel like I'm finally working in a company where my perspectives are valued.
They so are, Kathleen. We're so lucky to work alongside you and really the whole group of the XYPN teammates as we've gotten bigger. Every new teammate just knocks my socks off of what they bring to the table, their experience, their background, and you specifically have really, I know, brought a lot of joy and happiness to the people you work with, and certainly our members. I'm interested in kind of your work with members, pivoting back a bit. What have you learned about what advisors really need to focus on early on when it comes to building processes that are long-term? And is that something to even consider? Are processes long-term? Are you hoping to keep the same process for multiple years? As you start a business, what are the most important things to focus on?
Yeah, a really good question. Well, as advisors, I think oftentimes one of our biggest hurdles when it comes to building our processes early on is what I call analysis paralysis. As advisors, we tend to be perfectionists, and we want our processes to be perfect and functional from the start. And one of the things that I teach members in my financial planning and process webinar course is your processes don't have to be perfect from the beginning. It can be something as simple as just writing a loose process down on a sticky note or a sheet of paper, I think is a really good starting point. But ultimately, you have to make building your processes, and that includes systematizing and streamlining on the back end, paramount, especially early on, because when you're growing your firm to the point where you're now facing capacity constraints, you've hit that capacity wall, the last thing you want to be doing is finding time to establish processes, right? And the longer you wait to do it, it's likely the more overwhelmed you're going to feel, and then they're just not going to get done. And so in my financial planning and process webinar series, we talk about this, and I walk members through sort of the 8-week program that we've created here at XY, designed to help members block out time on their calendars to brainstorm and create processes. And to answer your question, yes, and the processes are for the long term, but also understand that processes should be revisited at least once a year, or especially when there are significant changes that have happened in your business. So, yeah.
Yeah, really good advice. I find in my role, process breakdown after all these years. If I've taken my foot off the gas a bit in terms of encouraging my team to create processes, it comes back and bites you. You really feel like, oh my gosh, I should have put that time in to making sure it's passed off. And what I've had real challenges with is it's almost like a game of telephone when you pass processes to different teammates, that it changes just ever so slightly. And unless you're encouraging them to really, really document it, you end up looking at the process 3 years later and you're like, oh, that looks different. Do you have any tips for if you're maybe managing people to making sure that the processes are iterated on, but then also shared contextually to the group when major changes are made?
Yeah. So if you have employees you're working with, they should definitely be involved in the development and creation of the processes, the workflows. They should understand what they are, how they work, and their role in seeing those processes play out. We talk about all of that in my financial planning and process webinar course, how to create workflows, for example, how to assign workflows to different team members, how to create descriptions of workflows and deadlines, the workflows. And definitely recommend getting the team members involved in all of your processes, because, I think the idea that is very rampant in our industry is, oh, my processes are in my head, and that's fine to a certain extent, but, how do we get those processes out of your head onto paper or documented somewhere so that if you have employees, they have access to what is in your head and they're not constantly hounding you around how to do this or how to do that because they know the process.
Kathleen, what are your thoughts on, can advisors over process? Can they get to a point? Is that what analysis paralysis is, that you've got too many to even have fun anymore?
Yeah. And I talk about this in my webinar series is, you don't want to over systematize. You don't want too many processes, because even Michael Kitces he talked about this in the past, and that you can over systematize to the point where you push the client further away from you. So when we talk about processes and systematizing and making things more efficient, I'm talking about processes on the back end. We don't want to systematize the client engagement. We want to make that personalized and customized as much as possible. So really keeping that in mind as you're building out your processes, I think is incredibly important.
I love that distinction. That's so on point. You do not want to process the client experience or the client relationship. Well said. What are the top 3 processes any advisor is maybe the folks that haven't jumped into running their own firms yet? What are the processes they should be thinking through?
Yeah, so they should be thinking about their financial planning timeline. So what does that look like from start to finish, from when that client or that prospect initially contacts you inquiring about your services to actually acquiring the client, to transitioning over to providing your financial planning services? And then if you're doing one-time engagements, what does that ending look like? Or if you're doing ongoing financial planning, what does that look like? So going through that whole timeline and sort of creating that timeline from start to finish, I think is really important. Another process that I think is really important is establishing a client service calendar. Another topic we talk about in my webinar is, the fact is that as financial planners, a lot of the work that we do is shadow work. When clients work with us, all they see is what we present to them in the client meeting, when we meet with them 2 to 3 times a year, and they're not seeing what's going on behind the scenes. And oftentimes when they're not seeing what's going on, then they start questioning, well, why am I paying this? And what are you doing for me lately? And so to sort of avoid those types of questions, I think a client service calendar can be pivotal to show a client, okay, so this is what we're going to be working on throughout the year when we're not meeting. In the beginning of January, we'll be reviewing your investment performance. In April, we'll be doing tax return reviews. In September, we'll be reviewing your employee benefits. And at end of December, we'll be doing end of year tax planning and so on and so forth, to really visually show the client what you're going to be doing for them. So I think that's also an incredibly important process. And not only that, but I think often what gets missed when we talk about client service calendars are they need to be centered around you and what your personal goals and what's going to make you happy. Because at the end of the day, at XY, we want you to be successful business owners, right? We also want you to be happy business owners. And oftentimes success and happiness are not synonymous with each other. And so how do you stay happy as you're going through the ebbs and flows of running a business is by making sure you're centering your business around your personal life and what's going to make you happy and your personal goals. So for example, if your goal is to run a business that allows you to spend more time with your family, okay, let's say that, for example, you want to take summers off. I know some members that are doing that. They want to take the summers off to just focus on spending time with their family. Then your client service calendar should reflect that. Your client service calendar should not have any meeting availability during that time because it is important for you to have that time off. Or another example, if it's important for you to travel the world while running your business, then you're going to be offering virtual meetings. You're not going to be offering a lot of in-person meetings if that's what's important to you. So I try to encourage members to start with your personal calendar first and develop that and really flesh out what it is you want to get out of life, what's going to make you happy, and then center your client service calendar around that.
I love that even our financial planning and process coach is preaching this idea of the why we're doing this. You know, I think about it all the time that we're not just helping financial planners be financial planners. We're helping them achieve success in their own definition. And I think it would be a waste for anyone to come and do this and not center their business around their own personal goals. Your personal goals can be that you want to serve and make major impact on your clients. So centered around that. But so many of our advisors do come in exhausted from their experience in the industry. And I think are almost afraid still of saying, I want a firm that puts me first. Any other advice for folks like that may feel that hesitation to how indulgent it may be to say, I want to take the summers off?
Yeah, I would just recommend to do some internal exploration and why those feelings are coming up for you. Is it coming from a feeling of you don't deserve to take time off? Because often that is the case. And just doing some self-exploration around why you feel like you don't deserve to take the time off when you need it, or really center your business around what is going to make you happy. Because really that's one of the benefits of being a business owner at the end of the day is you can create your own schedule, you can do your own things. So why not do that?
Right. And I believe as we lean more into what makes us more happy, we as individuals show up better and more authentically and can make, residual impact by that. You work alongside some badass coaches, Arlene and Carolyn and BB, of course. I'm wondering, through your work with them, have you talked at all about kind of what the hardest parts of those business phases are, and maybe in the first couple phases, what you see advisors face with and come up against as they decide to be entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that is a multifaceted question. I mean, there's a lot of challenges that members are going through at each phase, from sales, for a lot of members, they are new business owners, and many of them have not had a lot of experiences with sales and business development. So that's one challenge. I think another one that I've been hearing quite commonly is assistance with how to actually do the planning.
Oh, interesting.
Although many of our members are CFPs, and so they have that foundational knowledge, learning financial planning from a book and then actually applying it in a real world, a real client situation are two different things. And so I'm getting more members asking about support around that. We're seeing more challenges around the scaling phase, and especially member firms who want to go from, maybe that lifestyle practice to now becoming an enterprise and hiring advisors and increasing the number of clients they're serving. When XYPN started, we were known as the company that helps members launch their firms. Well, that was 7 years ago, back in 2014. And now a lot of those firms have matured and they're scaling and they're looking at, well, what's next? And so how can we support them as they get to that next level? So those are just a few of the challenges that I've noticed.
Yeah. And I love that first one, that how to do the planning is a real thing. And I think that's also going back to the permission that we need to let ourselves have, is that if you're going to be the lead planner, you get to do planning how you want to do planning. You get to choose who you want to work with and figure out what they need. What I encourage all of our teammates to do is go get an XYPN member as your financial planner, and you will eventually figure out what they really do. And as I work with financial planners, I'm always so amazed with, wow, that's their process. Wow, they did a lot of homework before this meeting. Wow, they really took into consideration different things. And that's the power of the network for advisors to come into XY and see what other advisors are doing for what it means to plan. Because as we kind of go around the niche circle, different clients need different things. We have different planners offering, education versus specific planning advice and things like that cater directly to their clients. I'm wondering what your perspective is on the future of this industry, given our conversation and the progress you've seen this industry make over the past 10 years. Where do you think we'll be in another 10?
Great question. That question is very similar to when clients ask, what do you think the market is going to do? Like, I don't know. And
no idea.
I don't know where the financial planning industry is headed. I have some hopes about where I hope it's headed. And the first thing is, I hope that we continue to take the emphasis off assets and AUM and think about, serving clients more holistically. I hope that we start to see, and I think we're going to see actually an increasing number of clients that are looking for advisors who can help them manage their money in a way that really aligns with their values. So, advisors that aren't, caught up on, socially responsible investing, ESG, social justice and racial justice investing, or, investing with climate change in mind. I think that you're going to miss out if you're not, in the loop on those topics. What I also hope is that we see more niches and more underserved and non-traditional groups being served. For example, I'd love our industry to talk more about serving polyamorous families. We're not talking about that at all, when in fact, there are some cities, a few cities around the country, Boston being one of them, that have legalized domestic partnerships for poly families. And so, and let me clarify, when I say poly families or polyamorous families, I'm talking about households that have 3 or more romantic partners. And they've got some really unique financial planning considerations, but there's not a lot out there to help those families.
Totally. We just had River Nice on the podcast, and they talked a lot about how they serve triads and polyamorous families, yet the technology is not even there to recognize them as
won't be able to input the data in eMoney. You can't put 3 partners in eMoney or Right Capital. Right.
And we're just now making progress towards, how we consider gender in the planning world. So I totally agree that there's so much change and progress that needs to be made to be more inclusive to the realities of our society.
Exactly. And it also makes me call to mind, servicing sex workers. There's a Think Advisor piece that came out a couple of years ago that I thought was just brilliant. And it was titled, "Sex Workers Need Financial Advice Too." And that's just another area that we are not talking about as an industry is, the sex work profession. They are starving for financial planning and advice. And so where are the advisors that are helping them? Right. Our industry, we need to get more sex positive, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. And less afraid of discussing it.
Exactly.
I know River had shared with me that, it's enough that they serve transgender folks. They were hesitant to shake hands and say they serve trans community members, but also polyamorous community members like that.
Right.
That's too much. But if we can continue
too far.
I think if we can continue to have conversations around and really do more in-depth thinking about who we are and who we want to be and where we want to serve, we can see a lot more progress here. And just in the past couple of years, as River and others have leaned into some of the technologies around, put other as an option, leave it blank for gender and things like that. We are seeing slow incremental changes to allowing advisors to serve more diverse clients, but we'll get there, Kathleen. Let's do it.
Really.
I'm wondering, as you think about your career trajectory, would you have changed anything about the past decade that you've been in this incredible industry of ours?
Could I change anything? I don't think I would. I think all of the experiences I had, both the ups and downs, the challenges and successes, are what have brought me here today on this couch in front of this computer, speaking to you and working for XYPN. So I don't think that I would change a thing at this point.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I asked that question and I'm always like, God, I hope no one actually says that they would have done something majorly different, because we should be looking at our experiences with that attitude. And any final tips of advice for folks that maybe were the Kathleen 5 years ago, looking around the industry, where's my place? Where do I want to be? How would you speak directly to them about where they are and where they could be?
I would say, you're going to need tenacity. You're going to need grit to make it in this industry, especially as a person of color or a woman. Unfortunately, that's just the way that it works. But you are more than capable of being successful. Find your tribe, find your community, find mentors that are going to help you, that are going to guide you along in this, and continue to be persistent, be bold. Don't be afraid to speak out, to speak your mind, and you're going to do great.
Wonderful. Kathleen, it's been such a pleasure to work alongside you and certainly have this conversation on XYPN Radio. Listeners, I encourage you to think through some of the topics we talked about. And Kathleen, thank you so much for the work you do with our advisors. You're loved by many and I know appreciated by all. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Maddie.
Tax planning and preparation is an enormous value add for your clients, but taxes can very quickly become overwhelming as an advisor. XY Tax Solutions is the tax team in your corner that works with advisors to offer expert tax services to their clients with 3 different client engagement options to choose from to meet your unique needs. Partner with XY Tax Solutions to integrate tax preparation and planning into your firm, and don't sweat tax time this year. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/XY Tax Solutions to learn more. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You are not alone and you are not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm, and that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.